National Centre of Indigenous Excellence marks what many are calling the renaissance of Redfern. There is a very real sense of rejuvenation and renewal around this iconic suburb, a renewal that the Redfern community has worked towards for many years, which now has a focus and a tangible symbol in the form of the centre. The NCIE is built on the site of the old Redfern Primary School, and it provides a safe environment for young people across this country to engage, to learn and to be inspired, while offering job opportunities for Indigenous Australians as well. I'm told that the target for Indigenous employment was exceeded during the construction phase here, with 35 Indigenous employment positions over the course of the project. It's anticipated that more than 30 Indigenous people will be employed in sport and rec, youth and community programs and hospitality once the centre is fully operational. These jobs are important to the Australian Government's commitment to closing the gap on Indigenous advantage as well, including halving the gap in employment outcomes between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians over the decade. This means we will need an additional 100,000 Indigenous Australians to find and keep jobs over the next 9 years. 100,000 Indigenous Australians. Focus on the number. We need to roll our sleeves up and make it work. We have a deep interest in making this happen, not just because it's critical for social justice. There's an equally strong economic argument for lifting our overall national workforce participation. Over the next 10 years, 130,000 young Indigenous Australians will enter the population of working-age Australians. We need to guarantee that they have the education and skills needed to move from school, TAFE and university into the workforce, and that they get a fair go when they look for a job. Just the other night in Canberra, I attended the Business Leaders Forum. It was an inspiring occasion. I don't know if many of you were there in Canberra that night. But to have representatives, CEOs, deputy CEOs, chairmen of the largest public corporations of Australia in Canberra for one purpose and one purpose alone, to roll their sleeves up and work with Indigenous business leaders and government on how we find and secure those 100,000 jobs. Like the game of rugby league on the Gold Coast, for those of you who doubt that reconciliation is now happening, for those of you who doubt that the community at large is now rolling its sleeves up to make it work, from the captains of industry down, think of those 100 to 200 leading CEOs in Canberra that night with Mark Arbiv, with myself, with Jenny Macklin, on to the practicalities of how we make it work. This initiative, of course, is about achieving real employment outcomes and changing company cultures to encourage effective recruitment and retention of Indigenous employees. As I said, the Australian Government is committed to closing the gap, and I'm confident that the National Centre of Indigenous Excellence can play a significant positive role in helping us achieve that. You know, folks, it's now 2 years and 2 weeks since the apology to the stolen generations. We know the apology was not the end of the healing process. We know it's just the beginning. It's just the beginning. But you know something? Without that apology, there could be no proper beginning. Since the apology, we've seen a renewed focus on creating opportunities for Indigenous people in this country. We've committed our support for the establishment of the National Congress of Australia's First Peoples and continue to engage with Indigenous communities across Australia in a large number of closing the gap initiatives and priorities. In backing up this commitment, governments around Australia have committed now $4.6 billion in funding across a range of reforms in chronic diseases, in housing conditions, in employment, in education, in service delivery, right across the nation. For the first time, every government, Labor and Liberal, state and federal, together around the table with a Closing the Gap National Partnership Agreement for the first time in the country's history. From little things, big things grow, and from bigger things, we hope even bigger things again grow. Funding alone is not enough to make sure these gaps are closed. We need unprecedented cooperation from all sectors of the community. With the focus often placed on remote Indigenous communities, we won't close the gap nationally if we don't focus on the 75% of Australian Indigenous people who live in urban and regional areas. All governments, families and communities have a duty to make sure our kids get the education needed to lead full, productive and rewarding lives. And that means here in Redfern as well. There is a really important word in this centre's name, and that single word is excellence. Each of you represented here today come from various fields of excellence, from business, from academia, from government, from the AFL, Andrew Demetrio, I see you down there, and from the NRL. Excellence is also entrenched in the ethos of this great centre. I hope that that word is a constant reminder to all who pass through these doors of just what can be achieved through hard work, the guidance of good people, and seizing the opportunities that are presented here with both hands. I congratulate you on the first-class facility that you have built here. I congratulate you in advance for the heights that you will reach, and I congratulate you for creating a place where the hopes and dreams of Indigenous Australia will be encouraged, will be nurtured, will be realised. It is now my great pleasure officially to declare open the National Centre of Indigenous Excellence.
Thanks for your life.